Kickers don't get enough love. They don't get enough love. But on the Football is Sexy podcast, they get all the love. Let's do this. We got Nick Lowry, Hall of Famer. Come on now, let's go.
Pretty good. Let's go. I can walk that walk. I can talk that talk. Lips still on gloss. Catch a toss like. Here we go. Here we go. Who that? Oh no. Bang bang. Run up.
My name is Monica Madrid. I am with Football is Sexy, and I am super excited to have today's guest. We have the Kansas City Chiefs all-time leading scorer, 18-year NFL vet, 3-time Pro Bowler, the most accurate kicker of his era, a true advocate for mental health, an author, speaker, leadership coach, and an amazing humanitarian. I'm so excited, yes, to have Nick Lowry.
Thank you, Monica. And by the way, 7 times All-Pro, which gives you an idea of how bad we were in the 80s, because they voted based on who was scoring the most points, not who had, 10, 15% better accuracy.
Oh, wow. Well, I got to add that 7-time All-Pro. I got you.
But you know what? In the end, I was lucky enough to get a guy named Marty Schottenheimer and Carl Peterson and literally almost overnight changed the culture of the Kansas City Chiefs. And I was able to taste what it was like to be in the playoffs every year. And wasn't quite the way it's been the last 9 consecutive division title seasons and 3 Super Bowl championships.
Yes.
About playing in front of a completely full Arrowhead Stadium with rabid fans, Joe Montana, Marcus Allen, Derek Thomas, and just to be part of a champion, to be part of a really, truly well-coached team. We had Bruce Arians, Tony Dungy, Bill Cowher, Marty Schottenheimer. That's 4 to me, all of them Hall of Fame coaches.
Legends. And we're going to get into all of it. But first of all, people are wondering probably, how did Nick get on the Football is Sexy podcast? And the answer is Tim Storey. You are Tim Storey's tag. So at the end of every podcast, I say, who's got next? And people can refer somebody to me. So you were referred to me by Tim Storey. How do you know Tim?
Well, Tim and I were in a lineup at the police station at 2 a.m. Severe alcohol issues. No, we're kidding.
Oh my God.
Tim is one of the finest people I know. I met him at the Think and Grow Rich tour. In this case, it was at the Hyatt at Gainey Ranch in Scottsdale, Arizona, 3 minutes from where I live. And I just instantly was impressed with him, and we connected. I told him about the work I do with the homeless and if I could help in him in his work in Los Angeles. And then D.H. Hughley, I've been lucky enough to know him, and I told him if he ever wanted to meet him. So we just kind of stayed in touch loosely, and then we reconnected again, and we have a lot in common. He is certainly a truly gifted speaker, one of the nicest people you'll ever know. He's been on Oprah, I think, 38 times, and he's an interesting combination of being a minister but also a therapist, and he, I think, most people would give him some credit for bringing some spirituality to a rather bankrupt spiritual culture in it's a harsh word, but I think it's true in LA. I think the Hollywood culture, if you look at most of the great actors, rarely has there been an actor portraying a minister, a man of deep spiritual qualities with any depth. And I think Tim, starting with Walter Matthau and Jack Lambert and some of the old guard, brought some of that to a Bible study, and then the younger group thought they missed it too. And I think that he made a meaningful contribution to being able to talk about your spiritual quest in your life and the challenges, because one of the things I think that's really, really true is that there are so many people that have won their Super Bowl, won their Oscar, achieved greatness, and yet arrived at the top of the mountain empty, alone, and some committed suicide. And it's because you can play the role of, Jesus, But if you haven't played the role in your own life, and to look at a success that is not vulnerable to outside noise and that lasts forever, if you will, that lasts and brings you the deeper satisfaction and joy in life, then you're going to end up being an unhappy person. And I think Tim really understands that. His assistant, Joseph, is almost equally gifted that way. So, when you have two people that are that beautifully aligned, and I just instinctively felt this connection with Tim, and he's connected me. I work with two really significant companies now that are in artificial intelligence, and we can talk about that as well, because rightfully people can be very concerned about artificial intelligence and what it represents and what it might mean. But Tim's story, I could go on and on about him, and Joseph. I think if you're lucky enough, maybe you are, Monica, to have an assistant. It's not fair to just call him an assistant. He's
a San Francisco guy, by the way. That's how we connected, believe it or not. So I met Tim at a podcast studio. And I won't say it's a chance meeting because it was meant to be 100%. And the reason that conversation opened up was because Joseph had a San Francisco Giant hat on. And as you know, I'm a diehard 49er Giants because of my dad. So we are here because of Joseph just having that hat on opened up dialogue. And then I didn't even know I was talking to greatness. I had Tim on and we talk about it on his podcast. But so I love Tim. He said I could call him a friend now. So he's my friend. He's my friend.
He is truly friendly. It's really hard to not have a bad word for somebody in your life.
Yeah.
There's always somebody that you go, oh, but that energy you bring when you bring negative things, energy, words about someone else, it always, just like good works, comes back to you in not such a great way. So I really admire Tim for finding a way to stay constructive and positive and also authentic. You cannot be authentic and say, oh, this is the greatest person ever. But in the end, it rings hollow. So that is a true gift, and it builds something. I think also I'm very philosophical today, but find a way to be constructive to people that we may not initially like. There's something beautiful in that, something in the creative part of our brain. And the creative part of our brain and our spiritual side are very related. I think about this a lot because as a kicker, I had to first weather being rejected by 8 teams 11 times, and I became very aware of how my mind either served me to be able to perform under that pressure and to beat out the greatest kicker in the history of the game in Jan Stennert, who'd been my idol, and then to break all his records and become the most accurate kicker in NFL history for 18 years, from 1980 to 1998.
Which is amazing.
Always a constant, challenge to prepare myself mentally, but it's also spiritually and emotionally, so that you can run out in front of all those people and just do what you do. Trust your God-given ability, which also happens to need to have all that great preparation as well. So all those things go through my head all the time in these choices we make that allow us to bring out the best in our lives.
Absolutely. And if you were undrafted, let's get into it. Well, thank you, Tim. We got Nick here, and thanks, Tim. But your story was crazy. You started out, you tell me, but you weren't drafted by the Patriots. How did the Patriots find you and pick you up?
No, I played at St. Albans School by the Cathedral in Washington, D.C., and could have gone to some big football schools, but almost went to Princeton. My twin sister went to Stanford, and I ended up choosing Dartmouth over Princeton, and had a good career as all Ivy, all New England. But I really got so much better, and I really give the credit to all those mistakes and hanging through, the persistence, and signed with the Jets. Wasn't ready for my first chance to make the team. Missed 2 field goals off the infield in San Diego. They cut me. And that first thought, that sense of being imposter, and also thinking that's the end of my dream. No, I'm in control of my dream. And I just better keep hanging in there long enough to figure out how to manage myself to be the best I can be for myself, but also for my team. And so that began this process where I showed up with no warning, with no invitation by the New England Patriots, whose kicker, John Smith, had an injury in his upper hip. And was 17 for 17 in front of Chuck Fairbanks on a deserted stadium field, and they kept John Smith one more game, and they lost that game, and John Smith couldn't kick long field goals, and they signed me, and the first game is against the Oakland Raiders in the first Sunday night national TV game ever with Frank Gifford, and realizing how scared I was to have Howard Cosell going, there goes the tall, angular one from Dartmouth College.
I love it.
And I wasn't ready yet. I made my extra points. The next week we played San Diego, and that fear was still there, and I missed a 45-yarder by a lot. And they released me, and I will say all of those things I'm very grateful for, because I just had to keep learning to get physically tougher and mentally tougher. And I think there's an analogy for all of us, to be the best, whether it's the greatest football is sexy podcaster or the future, Monday Night Football analyst or whatever, with all your other talents, Monica, it takes time.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad I realized that.
So I've been a fan my whole life, and I've always thought about the kicker, believe it or not, because I was always fascinated by the mental toughness that I feel a kicker should have. And but like, there's a thing where you don't, as a fan, right? We don't see the kicker until about the time when you're going to be called on, right? So I always wonder, where is the kicker the whole entire game? Like, I want to see you next to the O-line, maybe. You know what I mean? Where are you hanging out during the game? Like, when the defense is playing, like, where's the kicker hanging out? Like, where do you guys hang out on the sidelines?
Well, it's not like you have your little seat with kicker on the back, like direct.
Right.
You can move around. So there are 2 kicking nets. There used to be 1. Now there's 2. So you don't have to move it at the end of each quarter. Right about the 32-yard line, just outside the player and coach designated only area. And so you can be on that sideline between those yard lines. You can be sitting at the bench. You'll be crouching in front of the heater for a little bit when it's really cold.
Are you not talking to anyone?
What's that?
Are you like talking to anyone, or are you pretty much still to yourself?
It depends. I mean, I might be talking to the punter. In this case, my last few years, Brian Barker, who went on to a 16-year career, did pretty well himself. One thing I learned to do initially, I thought it had to be some mystical thing where I'd, get on the bench like Buddha and get myself properly ready to go and kick that football. But then I realized that keeping the juice in, so that you're not just stuck in your head. And I'd run to the sidelines and watch the collisions much closer. And every quarter, every half at least, I'd have one of the very large linebackers or offensive linemen hit me right here and just keep me awake, because it really is true. The blood goes to your head, you're thinking too much, and then you get a little bit too stiff. And as an athlete, I was a college baseball pitcher. I was MVP of my baseball team my last 2 years, and we were league champion in soccer my last 2 years. And, those are, you're in a flow. As a pitcher, you're in the flow for, half the time, every half inning. But as a kicker, you're isolated, and you can talk yourself or think yourself out of the flow of the game. And that is an incredibly important discipline, to focus on knowing what you already know how to do and not think too much, and not think about the consequences so much as just releasing your talent. And how the brain works, by the way, when it's self-conscious versus virtually unconscious.
Right. It's amazing to me. Is there a kick that haunts you the most for whatever? Like, hey, what happened? Poor Koo, the kicker. He kicked. What in the Lord happened there?
Still on their team?
I don't think so. I think they got rid of him. I'm not sure. I forgot to follow up, but he literally
Nobody
kicked
on
the
the, on
dirt.
the under credential. See if you can find out, because I just
Can somebody
interpreted you.
find out if Koo is still on? I think it was the Falcons. He kicked the dirt. He
He
kicked
was
the
on the
dirt.
Falcons, and this was for the Giants in New England. Yeah, the New England fans are the harshest fans in the NFL. They are tough, and you better be ready. So to get back to your question, I would talk and stay in the flow, and if I had to check out the cheerleaders, I'd do that. I'd just try to stay in the flow anywhere I could. One time, we're playing the Denver Broncos, opening game of the year. This might have been 1988, I think, and we're in the old Mile High Stadium in Denver. And back then, that stadium, the stands came right behind the fence, right behind our bench. So you could hear people very, very clearly. And there was one guy, because you're at the 32-yard line on either side, whose tickets were right even with the 32-yard line. He's about 10 rows up, 8 rows up. And he is just being merciless, and I can't not hear him. So then, of course, you try not to respond and try not to worry about it. And
like, what is he saying? Is he saying, like, I mean, can you tell me what he's saying? Kind of like, what are you hearing?
Well, I can't repeat some of it, but it's, Lowry, you suck.
I was gonna say.
The worst ever, man. I know your sister. You know, who knows what they're saying. So second half, it's late in the third quarter, and I still haven't touched the field. And your first field goal you've had each season, you want to start off on the right foot. And so,
no pun intended. No pun intended.
Exactly. So I finally just turned around and looked at this guy, and he looked at me, and he was eating popcorn. So I immediately went, and he came down, because you could walk right behind the bench. There's about a 5.5-foot fence. He leaned over, gave me some of his popcorn.
Oh my God.
And it's funny what happened then. We were then instant buds for life.
What?
I went on the field 3 minutes later, kicked a 43-yarder, nailed it, looked back, and he's now thumbs upping me like we're buddies, even though he was like the ultimate Denver Broncos fan and my enemy. So it's funny how those things, I wouldn't recommend that at all. It did work that time.
At least you didn't go over to the fan who was telling you suck and punch him like somebody might have this week. Did you see what happened with Metcalf?
I did. You know, he should never have gone over there in the first place.
That's what I said.
What probably happened, though, once again, you never know. That's the thing we got to learn as human beings, is we never know until we really do know. So like a reverse Yogi Berra. And in this case, he probably was doing something like, hey, I know your sister. I know hey, man, your family is really cool. Hey, I got a message for a member of your family, or something like that, to get him to come over, because he should never have gone over in the first place.
You know it's not going to be good. If you walk over, it's not going to be good.
And then when he got him over there, he said something unbelievably rude and inappropriate. And DJ just stayed there long enough to hear more and confirm that he was being a complete jerk and disrespectful.
Yeah.
And I don't think he punched him, but he made it look like he was kind of, and that's all it takes. So,
by the way, we just got word Koo was let go. He was released December 16th.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the guy lost it. I mean, I've never in my entire life, high school, college, let alone the pros, ever seen that happen. And then he made something up that the ball was moved and he had to adjust. The ball wasn't moving. And I feel bad, because he's a pretty good kicker. And that gives you an example. It's not just your physical training, it is also how you manage to keep that inner reality inside that gives you makes you an impregnable fortress, so that you can do what you know how to do. And I alluded to what happens to the unconscious mind versus the self-conscious mind. The self-conscious mind, big muscle groups, the larger muscle groups work, and they are not subtle. And you have to get out of that to be able to release it. So all the synapses in your brain know what it has to do. Your brain already knows how to run the way is your natural way to run, knows how to throw your natural way, knows how to swing your natural way, knows how to kick your natural way. And you have to trust that this is the best way, and I may not make everyone, but I'll make the best percentage by attacking the ball, not trying to crush it, but attacking it. And I can give you another analogy if you ask about what went through my mind.
When you're running out there, because as a fan of the game, the kickers have one job, right? Where some of the other players, they got to block, they got to run, they got to pass. When you're running out there and you know that they just called and it's, fourth and whatever and game's on the line, I'm wondering what is going through your mind. You've got 80,000, 60, 70,000 people. Some are cheering for you. Some are hoping you miss. Like when you're running out there, what is literally going through your mind? Like for me, I'm thinking I would hear like a Rocky song or I don't know. Are you thinking
that would help if you can keep that going? That helps. And I remember playing Buffalo in one of the first games of the season, and I remember playing for the Jets. My first game for the Jets, actually, and I ended up hitting 3 field goals, and we beat the hell out of the Buffalo Bills, who were the reigning AFC Championship for several years in Buffalo. And so that does help because that gets you into that state. There's a flow state. There's a frequency. But for me, it would be every game was different, but I would do my homework during the week of what I was going to expect, practice, game scores, situations, weather, everything. And yet there would be times I'd be running out and my brain would be going, this is scary. What am I going to do? And then the other part called your discipline, you have to say, shut up, trust what you need to do. So I would line up the kick. And my last 3 years, this really worked well for me. And I would literally, as I'm planting with my left foot before I kick, with my right foot, I'd say left foot. And that was just making sure my left foot pointed exactly at the target, because that was how my hips came into perfect alignment and my accuracy was more assured. And then I would say explode, kick left foot and explode. And the explode was my permission, the word that I used, everybody's unique, to attack the ball and to trust it. And that way, as I said, that's your unconscious mind as opposed to your self-conscious mind. And it works 100 times more efficiently. And when you hit it and strike it with that confidence and intention, it will fight the wind better because you're hitting it with your full talent, not trying to be too perfect. You get in trouble as a pitcher, which I learned, or as a kicker, when you go, oh, I better hit it 2 feet farther to the right. And the wind just came up. And that's when you get in trouble. So when you trust your God-given talent and you let it happen, it fights the wind. And I like that analogy for life. When you trust your talent, it fights the winds of adversity and better things happen because you're coming from that really important place that we all talk about these days called authenticity. Tim Storey is an authentic person.
Right.
Joseph Mendoza is an authentic person. We know people that are authentic and we trust them more. We know we're getting to their source.
Yeah. Absolutely. Speaking of authentic, I have never met him, but my dad was by the way, my dad's name was Joe, and he was a huge Joe Montana fan. My dad had season tickets to Candlestick Park since 1978. He had that whole Section 32 locked down. I feel like I grew up in Candlestick. So whenever he would send me birthday cards or Christmas cards, he would always write, "Love Dad." And before hashtags were cool, he would write #16. And that was for Joe Montana. So for my dad, I have to ask you, how was playing with Joe? You got a year with him, I believe. How was that? And is there any stories you could tell me about my man?
I can. First of all, it was as close as it could be to being with a true rock star. And I've actually have a couple rock star friends now. My friend is a huge Chiefs fan, Russell Hitchcock with Air Supply. He's older than the young people today, but he's a rock star. But Joe really was a rock star.
Legend.
And he was kind of shy in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
He knew what he could do and knew what he couldn't do. Didn't think of himself as some big genius. He just knew enjoyed what he had to do. And I sat with him. We were the 2 oldest guys on the team. First couple plane trips, and he was studying to be to get his pilot's license. But he told me then, I know now, and this is, of course, the second to last year of his career, when I come to the line of scrimmage, I know where I'm going to throw the ball. I can read the defense and the body language and positioning. Boom. And you saw that in his incredibly incisive decision-making. But the fun story I'd like to share is our first big game with Joe Montana at the helm was against John Elway in Arrowhead Stadium and the Broncos on Monday nights. And everybody's going, Elway in Montana, how's Montana going to do, blah, blah, blah. Well, I ended up, Joe kindly set us up for 5 field goals. And
nice.
Four, I think, in the first half. And I had a 45-yarder, 41-yarder, 52-yarder. And Joe's friend, Huey Lewis, was next to the kicking net. And so after about my third or fourth one, he goes, man, this is fun for you, isn't it? I'm like, yeah, it is kind of. And so that made it even more, of course, rock star like. So in the end, we're up 15-0. We're shutting them out. I wish we'd stayed shut out, but Denver scored a reasonably meaningless touchdown with 30 seconds left. And we won 15-7 on my 5 field goals. And obviously on the team blocking, great Joe Montana play, Marcus Allen. Everybody has to play the defense, incredible defense with Neil Smith and Derek Thomas and et cetera. But the next day, the front page of the USA Today, there was a headline at the top about that big that said, kicker upstages Montana. Oh. So I brought that paper in the next day and showed it to Joe, and he very kindly said,
oh, I love it. I love it. That's a great story. I didn't know he had it in him. I love it. One day I'm
a man of few words.
And I talk about him a lot when I'm on the podcast talking about personalities and being cocky and being confident versus cocky. And I always talk about, listen, I grew up watching the Niners and I grew up watching a guy named Joe Montana. And what I always loved about him, even at an early age, was just that he was confident, but he let his playing talk for him. I always felt. And he didn't have to talk. He didn't have to say these things. And a lot of players I feel are a little out of control these days with social media and things like that. And I'm old school, and so I always go back to Joe Montana when those kind of subjects come up because I loved watching him just do what he did. My dad was there, by the way, for the catch. I know we're going back. He wasn't on the Chiefs then. He was with the Niners, but my dad was there for the catch, literally 5 rows from the field. Yeah.
I was watching that, and Dwight Clark's roommate at Clemson was Steve Fuller, who was my holder when I started.
Oh, wow.
And Dwight was dating Miss Universe, Shawn Weatherly, who went to Clemson with him, and she was not exactly hard to look at.
No. As he should be. It was Dwight Clark, for Christ's sake. Yeah.
Right after that game, I believe it that year, he and Joe and teammates from 49ers came out to Hawaii for the Pro Bowl when it really was a football game.
Yep.
I remember seeing them arriving because they were a day later than the rest of us. And it was pretty darn cool. I ended up kicking the game-winning field goal in that game with a guy named Steve Largent holding. And
I remember him. Yeah.
And Jack Lambert was the left wing on our field goal team. It's the 82 Pro Bowl after the 81 season. And Jack comes up to me, and Jack did not have teeth here, which he took out when he played. And he had been coming to this country music bar restaurant at the Hilton Hawaiian Village, and I spent a couple of evenings watching him sing after his second or third beer. And he was a pretty good country singer, by the way, good raspy, low voice. So we knew each other a little bit. And he called me rookie, and I was actually not a rookie, but I would let him, Mr. Lambert, call me whatever he wanted.
That's right.
So we're driving down the field, and Lynn Swan with the Steelers was for ABC, and he wanted to interview me, and it's 13-13, so I got to kick the game-winning field goal. And I said, interview me after I kick the game winner, please. And then Jack comes over and he goes, "Rookie, I love you, but just remember, we make 5,000 if you make this field goal, only 2,500 if we don't. So make this field goal or I'll rip your fucking head off."
Well, there you go. There's some incentive.
Go to my Hall of Fame video, about a minute and 20 seconds in, somewhere in there. There's me kicking the game-winning field goal in that game, and you'll watch Jack Lambert, who's the left wing, and what a left wing has to do is he has to lean to the right because you don't want anybody scooting through that space because you're a half step behind the rest of the line. And then you push the other guy out on the outside there. He doesn't get an angle to block your kick. And as he spins, he sees that I kicked the game-winning field goal. And I'd never seen this, what happened after the kick. He runs over to me, hugs me, and holds me for a good minute and a half while all these 17 Hall of Famers, John Hanna and Earl Campbell and, all these incredible players running over to hug me because back then that was a little bit of money. And Jack was holding on to me the whole time. So he probably would have killed me if I hadn't made it. So I'm happy that I did.
Well, you're still here. So there you go. Thank you for letting him live. And thank you for hitting that through the uprights. We started the podcast before we actually came on, and you said it's been a little bit of a tough week as a Chiefs, because I'm sure you're still a big part of the Chiefs organization, probably an ambassador. By the way, shout out to Dante Hall, is my buddy. He was on the podcast. He kicked us off this season. Love Dante Hall, special teams guy. But right now, the Chiefs are not in the playoffs. This is the first time since 2014. This is the first time since Patrick Mahomes is going to be on the couch watching the playoffs. Like, this is almost unheard of for Kansas City Chiefs fans. How are you guys doing? Talk to me about how you feel. What is, and if you were in that locker room right now, what would your message be?
Well, I actually do a radio show for our tequila. It's El Bandito Yankee Tequila, and yes, it's really, really good. And a former Chief who went to the Green Bay Packers, Jim Bob Moore, started that. And so I have a show on the #1 sports station in Kansas City, WHB 810. Every week we talk about it. And but I will initiate my response by telling you that 2 weeks ago, exactly 2 weeks ago, I was at the Lowe's Hotel where they put me up for a Chiefs Hall of Fame weekend. And as I'm in the lobby, there's Donna Kelce sitting with a couple friends. And two of their friends had met me before. They were the parents of Tommy Thompson, who'd been the punter and the holder for us. And now it was with the team we were playing, the Texans. And Donna was very nice, very gracious. And there was about a 25-foot Christmas tree. So we took a photo in front of that. But the first thing she said was, they're just tired. They played an extra 19 games. And she was speaking for everybody, not just Travis. They're just tired. I mean, you have a 5 weeks less every single season to recover.
Yeah.
And you get burned out. And then frankly, they've gotten stale in their play calling, their schemes. I may be a kicker, but I can tell you that it's pretty obvious that there's protection problems. And when you've got the best
quarterback
that they've ever had, with all great due respect for Len Dawson, this is the greatest player in the history of the franchise by any measure. And you're not protecting him. You're not, to me, the ignorant kicker.
I don't know. Wait a minute. You have a master's. You have a master's from Harvard Kennedy School of Government. You're a smart guy. So go ahead. I just want to make sure that
anyway, but I'm, some say kickers aren't football players, but there's common sense.
Yeah.
I would add an extra offensive lineman and an extra tight end every single play, if not two extra offensive linemen when you got 3 injured, and only have 2 or 3 guys out and not have 5, because when Patrick Mahomes has time to plant his feet, he's unbelievable, but he hasn't had a chance to plant his feet and survey at all. He's running for his life, as we saw in the Philadelphia Super Bowl when he was getting his butt kicked. And the other side of that is you want to protect him so he doesn't get injured. And look what happened. 2 minutes left in the game a week ago. We're driving. We're down only by 3, 16-13. And he's running as he always does. And right near the sidelines, he gets tackled. And when you tackle, there's a chance that you're going to get legs and feet tied up. And that's what happened. Boom, LCL and ACL. And he'll be back. But if you're not careful, those are bad habits you develop when you're always having to throw off balance and having to throw a full second before you want to. And so that's the biggest issue for me. And besides the fundamental one of just team being tired, needing a break. And Andy Reid, you know what? He's been coaching a long time. He's the best coach we've ever had, and he's incredible. But I think he's worn out too. So it's going to be interesting to see how we can rejuvenate this. We had a lot of injuries on the offensive line. We had pretty good running backs. We had some talented wide receiver. Didn't have a pass rush. We had the lowest pressure rate of a defensive line and linebackers 3 weeks ago in the NFL. I don't think it's gotten any better.
Yeah.
And then the protection rate, 17 times being hit in one game.
Yeah.
You think that's okay?
Yeah.
I just don't understand that. And, I have as much, not only respect for Andy as a coach, but also as a person. He will never embarrass his players. If he has to say something, he'll say it to them privately. And, you really appreciate that. And he also brings out the best in his players. So I'm hoping this is what we call the exception that proves the rule, but they're going to have to be some serious changes on the offensive line. And also, frankly, we've gotten way too predictable. I mean, I'm just going to give you one more really interesting thing. Phenomenon. We've had both Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice.
Yep.
And Travis Kelce get hit really, really hard. Like that safety or cornerback what looked like they've been running for 100 yards. I mean, they'd had so much time to get their speed up, and they timed it, right? They timed it so that he gets the ball, boom, gets hit perfectly, so it's not interference. Well, that only happens if you're so predictable that the defensive back and safety see you coming, know exactly where you're going to be because you're predictable.
Right.
They just take a beat and can time it perfectly. That does not happen often, and it's happened 3 times in the last few weeks, and may have happened yesterday. I missed it if it did, but of course the timing is different with Gardner Minshew. But our receivers weren't getting open that much, so I think we might have to look at our offensive coordinator as well.
Yeah.
So the rumor is that Matt Nagy did not take the extension he was offered, so there may be that opportunity.
Being that I've been on the other side of when things were going your way a couple times, which Dante was not shy about reminding me that you guys beat us in the Super Bowl a couple of times. It's interesting that you say fatigue because, there's this whole thing out there with the fans, the Chief fatigue. You know what? Everyone's tired of seeing, they get tired of seeing the Patriots win. We get tired of seeing the Chiefs win now. I'm sure the Niners, had to deal with that in the 80s. But I think after a while, like you said, something's got to give, right? And they've played longer than all the other teams consistently. And some of them are getting older. And we talk about, Travis Kelce. He just looks tired to me this year. He looked, I believe that if you guys would have won last year, I think he would have retired on top. That's just my guess.
He might have. And I think he probably certainly will this time. Yeah, I agree with you.
I think he wants to get married to Taylor and just be like a part-time dancer and backup dancer and call it a day. It wouldn't shock me, I don't know. By the way, did you ever get to meet Taylor? I got to ask.
No, I haven't.
Okay.
But I think she's a little bit like the Beatles in her name and aura. I think she's one of the finest people you'll ever meet. I think she handles fame as well as you could. But when you've got that aura, it affects where you are and the people you're with. And I think Travis has done it as well as anybody could, but there's just no privacy. And when you're really busy, and he's been busy, I think it's taken its toll, and my prediction is he's going to take a year off, be married, get Taylor pregnant, and then he's going to come back like Gronkowski for at least one more year.
Wow.
We'll be refreshed. It's hard to pass up $20 million or whatever they'll pay him.
You heard it here first. I agree with you, but I didn't think about him coming back, but he could. I didn't think about that. Interesting. Well, we'll find out. We'll find out. Speaking of the Super Bowl, were you in the building for the 49ers versus Chiefs, either one of them?
Yes, I was there. I had dated Harris Faulkner, way back in 1994, my last year with the Chiefs. And she was with me when Marty Schottenheimer called and said, it was the first year of free agency, and the knuckleheads evaluating kickers were like, well, kickers are only on the field for 7, 8, 9, 10 plays. It can't be that important, except if you're at 87% versus 77% like the rest of the league. And you make that one kick that makes all the difference. So she was great, and she asked me if I'd like to sit with her at the Super Bowl. And her husband kindly stayed home, very nice guy that he was. And she did an article in the USA Today about checking in with me from time to time about the Chiefs. It just said some nice things. And I sat with her at the Super Bowl with a bunch of the other Fox people there. And it'd been 50 years since they had won a Super Bowl or even been in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And so pretty darn cool. We were one game away with Marty in mid-January 20th something, 1994 with Joe Montana. I got another Joe Montana story from that. Would you like to hear it?
I'll take it. Let's go.
I kicked my second field goal late in the third quarter. We're only down by a touchdown. We stopped them on defense. We got the ball back, and we got Joe. I mean, hello. And a guy named Bruce Smith, who's become a good...
I remember Bruce.
Only pass rushers with 200 sacks, incredible player.
Yep.
He sacks Joe. Joe fumbles, but he also gives Joe one of the worst, if not the worst, concussion of his career. So if Joe had stayed in the game and not gotten a concussion, I think we could have beaten Buffalo, and they end up getting beat again by Dallas a week later. But I'm sitting on the bench, and Joe is only 8 and 10 feet away from me to my right, and the Chiefs had placed a security guy in front of, to the right of, to the left of, and behind, so that the cameras couldn't catch an angle of Joe, who was kind of like this, because it was such a bad concussion. Just an interesting insight. But Joe is such a tough guy. If there's any possibility he could have come back in the game, there are different rules, and rightfully, we've taken some very important steps, need to do more to protect players from concussions and also getting back into the game while they still have a concussion, because that's when the real damage happens. But that was just an interesting thing that there's Joe, and he's just absolutely been nailed by Bruce Smith. And unfortunately, that kept us from the one Super Bowl I could have played in.
Yeah. Well, how does it feel to be in those games, though? And you guys went to several playoffs, correct? I believe. Yeah. I mean, like, you guys were in the conversation many, many times. How does that feel? Well, even walking off the field, knowing you just missed the kick in front of 80,000 people. How does that feel, and how do you deal with those type of losses? I can't even imagine. Honestly, it's a lonely trip, man. Back to the sideline.
I had hyperextended my knee against the San Diego Chargers, and I still kicked the game-winning field goal to clinch our first playoff spot in 1990. And I just rested it, came back, kicked 5 field goals in the mud, in the fog, in Soldier Field. We beat Chicago. And then a week later, we're playing the wild card game, and I kicked 3 field goals. That's 24 in a row. Led the NFL in scoring, all pro, all that good stuff. And we're driving, and Christian Okoye, who had been spectacular for us the year before, over 1,000 yards that year with a guy named Barry Word, another 1,000. and Christian carries the ball first down on the 10-yard line with a minute left. So all we have to do is basically just run 3 times, use up the clock, and kick a game-winning field goal or score a touchdown. And the refs, and yes, you do need to have full-time refs. It's too much money, too much
on the line.
We're talking about how close everything gets. That last second play with the Steelers and Detroit is one example. But anyway, so they call the only holding penalty on the Chiefs of the entire game and the only penalty of the entire second half on us. And it was on rookie Dave Zott, so they nailed a rookie. That they tend to do that. And the run was completely on the other side away from the ball, so it didn't do anything to the play. And it was very debatable anyway. So now suddenly, instead of a short field goal, I'm back at right around 52, 53 yards. And I nailed it best I could. And I remember it was dead center. And it was like the hand of God just went, and it grazed the crossbar. Didn't go through, otherwise we would have won. So what's interesting is I had a New Year's party at my house in Paradise Valley out here in Arizona about 10 years later. And the referee, this is life, the referee who was under that crossbar lived in McDowell Mountain Ranch in Scottsdale. And he said, Nick, it grazed the crossbar. Because I wondered what, I mean, it just didn't go through. And so that's the one I missed the most. I knew I gave it my best. But I'm walking off the field and I'm sad. I remember calling my parents and crying, but also being proud I did the best I could at 3 field goals, et cetera. And but there is definitely a frustration because that was an interestingly timed call. And we had a good team. We didn't have Joe Montana, but we had Steve DeBerk, who was an awesome leader, a very good quarterback. We had a great defense, undeniable running game, really well coached. Like I mentioned, we had Bruce Arians, Bill Cowher,
legends,
and Marty. So it's too bad. That's the one, and it's hard. The thing that you don't realize quite so much until it happens to you is you can win every game and be the number 2 team in the whole NFL. But if you finish that season, in this case the Super Bowl, with a loss, it's awful. Every team that loses in the playoffs feels somewhat like a loser.
Yeah.
It's a horrible feeling. And you got to, of course, reorient what you did right, what you did wrong, and make sure that you get that much better the next year.
Oh, I can't even imagine what it'd be like to be a player. Because as fans, when my Niners lose the Super Bowl, I am now not watching TV for weeks. I am not watching ESPN. I am not, because I don't want to relive it. Like, I don't want, and that's just as a fan. So I can't imagine, speaking of Jake Moody, right? Poor Jake Moody, our 49er kicker, versus your Chiefs, missed field goal, missed the point, and I can't put it on him, but like we had other chances. But let me ask you, watching that game, I'm sure you identify with the kickers, but were you secretly going, miss Jake, miss, because I mean you were a Chiefs fan, so I'm assuming you were still, is that camaraderie between the kicker, or
it's sort of like in that movie Caddyshack where they're going, Noonan, miss it,
yeah,
miss it.
Yeah.
But Moody hit a 55-yarder that was at that point a record until Harrison Butker, who's gotten a lot of unfair criticism this year.
Yeah.
To this day, he's missed 3 field goals, 5 field goals, but only 2 inside 50 yards out of about 26. And he did miss 4 extra points, but I think he's still a special kicker. But it's a tough job. People will always remember when you miss.
100%. 100%. So, there's this thing called tight end university, and the tight ends get together. Is there anything like that for the kickers? Do you guys like hang out? Like, is there a kicker, retreat yet?
We had a competition in 1987, 88 in Vail, Colorado, and I was voted best kicker in the NFL by those guys, and they gave me a football with my name on it. And if it was here, I'd show it to you. But, you know, I don't remember anything since except we got a bunch of guys together at the Hall of Fame.
Well, see, I'm calling it for you, Nick. You guys got to do a tight end university for kickers. That's got to happen. I'm seeing it in the future.
There you go. Well, we're lucky people. When I hear, as I do often, a mother saying, "I want my son to be a kicker," I say, or an NFL kicker, I say, you don't want him to be an NFL kicker. You want him to be a very good NFL kicker, because being an average NFL kicker, even though it's the NFL, ain't that fun.
Right.
That's Jake.
Well, you are one of the best to ever do it. And thank you for your NFL service, especially for the Chiefs fan. You're the Hall of Famer. You are the epitome of a great kicker. But let's talk about, before I let you go, your retirement, the things that make you happy now. You are doing so much for the world, all these good things, God's work. What makes you happy today, and you're an author, you have a book out. Tell the people where they can find you.
So you can pre-order the book. It's called Naked and Alone with 80,000 People, which I think does a great job of summarizing what it's like when you're running on the field. Naked Alone with 80,000 People. You can just look it up at Nick Lowery, Lowery, nicklowrybook.com. I love what I do with Champions for the Homeless. We'll have our 75th in 19 years and our 19th Christmas Champions for the Homeless. We have incredible music. We give away thousands of pairs of underwear, socks, t-shirts, long sleeve shirts, incredible music, flowers, gift certificates. We have two 40 by 20 foot murals at St. Vincent de Paul. We give away hundreds of haircuts and chiropractic adjustments. We have an acupuncturist as well. We just try to shower our homeless brothers and sisters with the idea that they're not forgotten, that they aren't caught and drowning in the shadows of the American dream. And we put a human face on the homeless. And for those of you in California, that's where the difference is made in the chance to give a sense of meaningfulness for our homeless brothers and sisters. You gain a sense of what's really important in life. And I love the fact, like being a kicker, being a veteran in this work, you get better in your intuition, etc. And then I'm part of something called Project Max, which is pretty important stuff now, which is I've been to Israel twice. We brought 100 Ukrainian Jewish refugees from Poland to Israel. I came with Jay Feely and with Sean Alexander, who's NFL MVP back in 2005 or 6. Wonderful people. And then Project Max is using sport, through sport, to fight against racism, anti-Semitism, intolerance, and hate. We have a lot of, if you go to projectmax.club, you'll see a lot of NFL players, particularly NBA players. My friend Eddie Johnson, who's the voice of the Phoenix Suns, is part of that. We have a beautiful combination. When I was there at the global conference for Israel in Miami 2 months ago, I was with two gold medalists, one from Iran and one from Israel. And they loved each other, and they were told, the one from Saeed was his name, the one from Iran was told he couldn't have anything to do, could not fight, had to forfeit his fight against the Israeli, and he would have won the gold medal then, because the regime didn't want to recognize Israel. Well, they looked at each other and said, that's a human being on the other side there. And so in the end, he was able to escape Iran, even though his parents were threatened. And that you've got two guys that are standing proudly to say an Iranian and an Israeli can get along because we believe in the dignity of all human beings, and we love each other, and the people of Iran are more important than, for want of a better word, the knuckleheads that try to shape human behavior against what is the human heart and soul.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing all of that with me, Nick. I appreciate all that you're doing. I mean, it's just paragraph after paragraph of all the amazing things you do to give back to humans. So thank you for your service. Really. I mean that.
I give to aliens too. You said to
Do
give to
you? Okay.
homeless. There's some homeless aliens on the planet Destructo in the third galaxy,
Oh my goodness.
and we're trying to have a homeless program for them.
Oh my God. Well, we'll add them to the list. Add them to the list. Well, I know we could talk all day long, and I hope that you let me reach out to you when the Super Bowl comes and we could talk a little bit about your predictions. But before I let you go, we're gonna do this one last thing. And it's how you got to be a part of my podcast, because Tim referred you and said, you gotta talk to Nick. So who got next? Who got next? Who do you think would talk a little bit of life and football with yours truly?
Well, I was going to say Roger Clemens, because he played football at Texas, and then he had 7 Cy Youngs, and so if that's allowed, Roger Clemens has a lot of stories. Even though he's not an NFL football player, he was one of the biggest football programs in the country, and I think you'd love having him on. And there's some lessons from Roger Clemens about leadership in the locker room, that is why the Yankees were better with him, why the Toronto Blue Jays were better with him. Every team he played, Houston, every team he played with, he was better. And quick story about Roger Clemens. I know he got lots of stories, but
You got a lot of stories.
Toby Keith, when he was fighting cancer, he'd come to Houston, where Roger lives, and going to MD Anderson, and Roger let him stay at his guest house. And I mean, just to me, all of us have a chance to use our stage, whatever stage it is, big or small, even if it's to help one person. So I'd highly recommend Roger Clemens.
Roger, you've been tagged. Let's go. I'd love to have you on, Roger. So let's do this. Nick, thank you so much for joining Football is Sexy. I appreciate you. I'll be seeing you, and we're gonna circle back around the closer it gets to Super Bowl. I'd love to hear your prediction as we get closer.
And I will tell you, if you want to back up, Bruce Arians.
Oh, I would love to have Bruce.
Okay, one or the other. We'll get probably
Hey,
both.
Bruce, you've been tagged. We're going to do both. How about that? We're going to go Bruce Arians and Roger Clemens. You've been tagged by Nick Lowry. Let's go. Thank you. And as always, keep it
Sexy.
Yes, let's go.
Sexy, I'ma say it with my chest. Football sexy, I'ma rep.